Hi everyone, this is Lucy here. I am just going to give a quick overview of my call with the BBC reporter yesterday. I'm really happy about it. I think it went well. I'm going to tell you what we spoke about and also give you an overview of the vision that I wanted to put forward. So, he asked me to tell him my gang stalking story. He said that he had been researching into stalking and harassment, and he'd been looking at the Susie Lamper website. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that is affiliated with the National Stalking Helpline, I believe. And he said that he was planning to cover gang stalking because he had found out about it. People had been discussing on that forum, asking why people weren't discussing gang stalking, so he's looking into it. He's planning to cover it, but he has to do sufficient research first. So I told him that, a few things about what's happened to me. For example, the damage to my property, the physical harm. I mentioned that I'd been attacked with technology. I said that criminals have been using state resources. The techniques and technology that would usually be used for surveillance of genuine criminals are being used by criminals on illegitimate targets. And I mentioned the issue of Song, the technique, and how Song is designed to make the victim look as though they're guilty. I mentioned street theatre, I mentioned the brainwashing. He also asked me what brought me to the conclusion that it was a setup. And I think that's a really important question for all TIs to have their answers ready to, because there usually are a lot of different things that have combined to make the targeted individual realise. But that is what has to be conveyed to the next person, and picking out just one example from a whole complex network of different events, how they, give you pieces of the puzzle at different times. It has to be clear to the other person. I mentioned that I have been suffering from a sleep disturbance. I said that I've basically been invaded. They are evil, violent, they need some kind of psychological treatment, and they should really be locked up because they're dangerous. I said that we needed the police and we need the United Nations. He asked me how I felt when I found this out. He asked me if any of my friends helped. He asked me if I'd contacted any MPs. I said that I had, and that I had also contacted some stalking organisations, national stalking organisations, several, and I'd also looked at various organisations in Brent as well. But I mentioned that I had contacted one that was safeguarding adults or something, and that usually has some kind of mental health element, but I didn't realise it at the time. I just thought, because it said safeguarding adults, I thought, I'll call that number because it sounds like, because I need to be safeguarded and I'm an adult. But I'm not sure if that was a perfectly relevant organisation to call. I also mentioned that there are other TIs and that they need help. I said that some TIs are genuine and others are paid to give disinformation, so they shouldn't all be believed necessarily, but there are genuine ones, clearly, who do need genuine help. And I mentioned about the BPC protest. He asked about it. I mentioned that it was going on the 29th outside the BBC headquarters in London. He then asked me to discuss what were my main points that I wanted to mention here. And I said, look, that there are dangerous criminals. They have been causing massive damage to Africans as well. They have been carrying out psychological terror. And it's not just against African people, it's against other people who are also fighting for social justice. For example, Julian Assange, Snowden. I think the authorities have to recognise this. There has to be some kind of investigation into the misuse of these military-grade technologies. I mentioned that there had already been the Church Committee investigations in the 1970s where this had happened before and it had been revealed before, and a huge amount of torture victims had come forward before. I also mentioned that he was not the first media outlet to cover this, and it had been covered by several outlets in America, and also the Vice documentary, although I think that the Vice documentary hadn't definitively said that this problem was true. I did ask him to sort of intimate if he was, believing this story, and he seemed to sort of believe it. He wasn't sort of asking questions like, do you have any mental illness or anything like that? He sort of was asking, how do I feel about it? So that also intimated that he was taking it seriously. I also mentioned that I'm, working on abuse and cruelty projects, harm to animals, harm to children, and he asked about my Lucy Targeted Individual channel, my YouTube channel, which I'm posting this video on. So he's looked at everything on my playlist. He's looked at the huge crimes there, crimes of investigation. I mentioned that this is basically a new Holocaust, virtually by the same people, but they use trauma-based mind control to affect the population, and that I'm being psychologically and physically harmed, and that I need urgent help, and that everybody needs urgent help. So I think I've covered all the bases. He said that he'll be calling me back later. We're going to speak again, and hopefully we'll be able to take it a bit further. Just to add to this video, by the way, that sorry it took a while for me to upload it. I was waiting to just confirm that it was okay for me to discuss what I had discussed in the phone interview. But it seems the protest was a really massive success. It seemed as though the protest went well all over the world. The UK turnout seemed really, really good, so that was fabulous. Well done, and thank you to everybody for that. That has helped us all so much. One thing that I think is going to be really important is getting those contact details of those genuine TIs that turned up. It would be great to know who was there. There is a massive difference between having a list of perps and genuine TIs. So I will upload this for now. Sending good wishes to everybody for now.